shotglassdigital.com. RebelForce Radio's Fangirls Going Rogue is brought to you by Little Debbie Snacks and their new Cosmic Cupcakes.
RebelForce Radio presents...
Hello, what have we here?
Fangirls Going Rogue.
I met her in a Jedi chat room.
Star Wars news, topics, and conversation from the female point of view.
I like the sound of that.
With Tricia and Teresa Delgado. This is Fangirls Going Rogue.
Welcome, everybody, to another awesome episode of Fangirls Going Rogue, brought to you by RebelForce Radio. I'm Teresa Delgado, one of your hosts, and with me, as always, is my buddy. He's your buddy. She's your buddy. It's Tricia Barr. I don't know why. I just went into the Monsters, Inc. laugh floor for some reason.
That's all right. Maybe it's because you've been hanging out at Disney a little bit.
Little bit.
I know. So exciting. I mean, I feel like we just recorded, but March has happened, and it was this crazy fast event, and I don't even know where it went. So, but I do have to say, I had a little fun in March that I haven't got to talk about, and I know you have too, Teresa. So I got to go visit Lucasfilm and meet Chopper, actually. So just went on a little tour, got a little picture of him, and it was an absolute blast. So I'm going to thank Matt Martin for that little highlight in March. And other than that, I feel like I haven't accomplished much. But that was my excitement. And I know you had some fun, too, this month.
I did. I got to go home for 2 weeks, and I worked South by Southwest. And anybody who doesn't know what that is, it's a big tech, film, and music festival convention type of thing. And so I worked that, and it was super duper fun. Actually, Skywalker Sound was there and did a panel, and that was pretty interesting. There were some films that came out, like there's a film coming out called Bad Words that I got to see. I got to see the premiere of Cosmos before it actually aired on Fox, so that was pretty cool. And Veronica Mars debuted at South by Southwest, so yeah, there was a lot of cool stuff.
Oh my God, you get to do a lot of cool things.
I did, but we also had some not so awesome stuff happen in March, and we're going to talk about this more, I think, on our next episode, but we wanted to mention it now that we were both very saddened and I think shocked and maybe a little bit traumatized by the death of Aaron Alston. I know, Tricia, you were for sure, and I was. I couldn't really speak for a while.
It was funny because when I first heard the news, it actually happened the day after we recorded. So I felt like we had this huge break where we just couldn't. But I ended up putting together a blog post and there have been so many others. The best one has been Mike Stackpole wrote this at stormwolf.com, his site, this amazing tribute to Aaron Alston. And we're going to come back and celebrate his life and what he did for Star Wars fans. But we just wanted to recognize, his passing. And I'm sure he is one with the Force and going to be enjoying what we enjoy as fans from the Force. So we will miss him dearly.
Definitely.
But there was something that I saw, Teresa, I just had to tell you about, and it was, Star Wars Weekends is going to be coming up, and we're actually planning on definitely doing next episode, sort of our tips and hints, because we've both been. And then I saw this come out yesterday, and they have dinings with the Star Wars characters at Star Wars Weekends, and we can't wait to tell you about that, because you need to get it done. You need to get these reservations.
Oh my God, do you not know?
No, I don't know about this stuff. So, I mean, I go to Disney, but I know you're the expert, so.
I know, but I can't believe that I haven't told you. We're going.
What do you mean we're going?
We're going. I made reservations.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so which one are we going to? Because I have to know this.
We're going to the the Star Wars, or what's it called? The Star Wars Galactic Dine-In, or something. What? Oh man. But it's the breakfast one. The one at Sci-Fi Dine-In. So we get to eat with stormtroopers, Jawas, Greedo, Boba Fett, and we get a commemorative photo with Darth Vader.
Okay, so these are just for people so they know, there's one with Disney characters as Star Wars characters, and that one's at Hollywood and Vine. And then there's the Star Wars characters that will actually, like you said, the real Star Wars characters are real as they can be.
What are you talking about? They are real. All of the characters at Disney are 100% real. You're really eating with Mickey and Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse. I don't know what you're talking about.
And they're going to be playing Star Wars clips on this. I've been to the Sci-Fi Dine-In Theater, so I do know that they play sci-fi clips while you eat, and it's like a drive-in movie, right?
Yep, drive-in movie.
So I want to know, because do you have an autograph book? Do you have them sign your autograph book?
I do have an autograph book. I have been using it at Star Wars Weekends, and it's where I get my my signatures from the celebrities at Star Wars Weekends, and it's actually a Star Wars Weekends themed autograph book. I haven't gotten character signatures in there, but because of these specific dining events, Star Wars characters will be going in my Star Wars Weekends autograph book, so I will be bringing that with me for sure. And there's a lot of good information about these two dining events. I did a post on Jedi News already, and then I also put a link to it on my website on fangirlnextdoor.com, so you can find out all the information. The only thing is with this going up, when it's going up, for anybody that's listening, it may be hard to get a reservation if you're just hearing about this when you hear this show. Because from my understanding, the phone lines were tied up, and they were tied up for me too. People were waiting on the phone for an hour, hour and a half to get into Disney Dining to call about these special dining events. And from the Disney Dining cast member that I talked to, all of her calls that day prior to mine, and I talked to her like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, had been in regards to these Star Wars specific meals. So they're filling up, and they're filling up fast. So I'm sending out good vibes to everybody that's trying to get a reservation. And you can only get them by calling the Disney Dining number, and that is 407-WDW-DINE.
Yeah, it definitely be flexible and try. And sometimes they will open back up. So if you don't get it right away, try again later. I've had that experience where sometimes things that aren't available open up later on. So we hope that people can get into this. And if you can, it's a fun experience.
Yeah, it is. They're going to be available from May 4th, which is, I feel like, an appropriate day, from May 4th to June 18th. So if you're going on a trip in between that time frame, and you're not just going for Star Wars Weekends, like maybe you're going and your Star Wars Weekends falls during your trip, try and do it on one of the days that's not a Star Wars Weekends day, because I have a feeling those 3 days are going to fill up the quickest. And so you may be able to get in on the Thursday before or the Wednesday before, the Monday after, a lot easier.
There you go. So I know that if we go, then we're going together. I'm going to have to do some fashion consulting, because I saw your great Instagram of your little rogue dress with your rogue earrings and your rogue necklace, and you accessorized it. So with a little belt and a black sweater when it got cold. So I thought that was a fabulous outfit.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we decided to go up on a Saturday, and I thought, well, maybe I'll, dress fun. And so I put on my Rogue Squadron dress, and then I thought, well, maybe if it gets cold, I should wear leggings. So I had my footless leggings that I just put them down right below my knees. And I love the X-Wing dress. The only thing I think that it's missing is like that belt to go across the middle to just kind of break up the white. So I put a black stretchy belt around the waistline part of the dress, and then I had my Rogue Squadron necklace on and my Rogue Squadron earrings. And this is actually the first time I've ever worn the dress ever. So I was like, okay, this is going to be great. Then we get to Disney, and I'm hot. So I took my leggings off, and then we're waiting for the brand new parade, and this gust of wind comes by, and I was like, whoa! And then I was like, maybe I should put my leggings back on.
I I would recommend having worn the X-Wing dress to the Rogue Squadron dress to Star Wars Weekends last year, that definitely leggings are work well with it, especially when you're walking around all day and, you know, you can climb in and out of things, you know, feel like, oh, well, I'm going to, you know, it's just a nice way to go. And then, you know, when it gets, you know, it's usually hot and, but, you know, you're protecting yourself from the sun too. So,
well, either that or wear shorts. I usually wear shorts under a dress or a skirt anyway, but I didn't think about it because I had my leggings on when I left the house. So I thought to myself, well, maybe I should have brought my little shorts that I put on underneath my dress. So when we wear, because we will wear our dresses at Star Wars Weekends, we'll wear shorts or leggings. But that's also a good thing to bring up. I think you mentioned this, but RebelForce Radio will be there during Memorial Day weekend, which is the second week of Star Wars Weekends, and we're going to be down there. So if you're going to be around, let us know, because we're planning on doing some cool things and maybe doing some rides together as groups of fangirls and fanboys representing RebelForce Radio and representing Fangirls Going Rogue.
And I'm guessing that probably Twitter will be one of the ways that people communicate. It seems to be the way people communicate a lot in those type of events. So, hey, we're all going here type thing. Right.
And I think, Tricia, you and I will nail down if we're going to do what special things we're going to do. And we'll try and let everybody know where we're going to meet. We'll pick landmarky type stuff, but we need to get in there, or I'll be there the first weekend. I need to get in there and see how they're going to have it set up this year. That way I know where a good meeting spot will be that's not in the main line of traffic and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. So we'll definitely be talking about it. On the next episode, we'll give some tips and advice and different stuff. And then, you know, and probably we'll try to do a fangirl chat or something after the first week. Just a real quick one that says, like, you know, here's some quick tips or some way to communicate that out to people.
Definitely. And since we just talked about my dress, this might be a good time for us to mention that Her Universe has released a really cool thing. It's the Her Universe Fashion Show Contest. And with this fashion show contest, you get a chance to go to San Diego Comic-Con, and you get a chance to design a piece with Ashley for Her Universe, which is really cool. And if you've seen it online, she's been putting pictures on Instagram and stuff like that of her in this really cool Darth Vader specially designed dress with a I don't know what it's like, the helmet of Darth Vader, but it doesn't look like a helmet. It looks like a hood of like a hoodie kind of sort of thing, but fancier. It's really cool looking, and I think it's really neat that she's doing this fashion show contest thing.
Well, I actually want the helmet, whatever that thing is, because she looks amazing, and I can't draw or sew or anything, but she actually talks about, you know, there's ways you can work together with other people. So, you know, if you have some enterprising fans, you know, maybe someone who can draw and design and someone who can sew, you know, there's a number of different ways that you can get involved. But I think it's really cool because, you know, wow, geekdom in, you know, kind of couture fashion. It's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. We haven't done this next segment in a while, and by a while I mean since our first episode. So we decided to bring it back, and this is a segment where we talk about what we're looking forward to. And actually what kind of started this was that Erish posted on Facebook, and the post that he put up had to do with Star Wars Legos, right, Tricia?
Yes, this is on the Star Wars Books Facebook page, and it's our friend Erish Shenevice, and I hope I said it right, Erish. I hope you're listening. He does listen to RebelForce Radio, so but anyway, it was sort of like he had a cool Lego set up, and it was, you know, kind of your wish list of what you really want, and it's the Ewok Village, right? Yeah, on the post, and we'll put again in our show notes. So we decided to talk. We're like, oh yeah, we need to talk about the things that we really are looking forward to, because there's so many amazing things coming out that, you know, you just forget. So, Teresa, what's your list?
You go first.
Okay. The thing I've been looking forward to is the Quirk book, the Star Wars Shakespeare book, and it's The Empire Striketh Back. I noticed today on Twitter that Jen Heddle from Lucasfilm said that it was coming out on the bestseller list. That that it did the first edition did very well, first volume, sorry. And I my friend Kay, who we've done Fangirl Chats, she has been reading it. She's going to do a review for Fangirl Blog, and she just said there's so many in jokes that if you love Shakespeare or Star Wars or both, that you'll just love kind of what Ian Dosher did with the story. So, and, it was very much a popular thing. It's just, we all grew up studying Shakespeare, in high school they made us read that stuff, but so for some reason, it still works. So
Shakespeare
that's
works
one of the
all the time.
It always works, sort of Anakin and Padme, where, like the tragedy of Romeo and Juliet, in front of it, in a way. You could see that parallel. And then I saw in the Mary Sue these cool, nerdy coasters that these, the one that I saw has the Rebel logo on it. And they had Batman ones and Mando ones and all different geekdoms. But again, we'll put that link up there. And coasters to put your drinks on. And I was like, those are the coolest looking things ever. I have to have them. So, but you can't wear them with your Rogue dress. That's what I was thinking with those coasters. I'm like, yeah. So, Fangirls Going Rogue.
So for me, I'm actually looking forward to the Ewok Village Lego set really bad because I really, really want it. But it's strange. The thing I'm looking forward to the most is something that's not even announced that I'm just assuming is going to happen. And that's going to be new Her Universe gear for Star Wars Weekends. I have no idea what it's going to be, but I'm so excited because I know it's happening. It has to happen. It happens every year.
Well, that's true. And there is, I don't know if you noticed, there is the new Clone Wars shirt that they just put out this month with the release. So that's definitely on my list. But yes, I've been eagerly anticipating, and I'm hoping there's some scarves like the awesome, I'm not really a Doctor Who fan, but she had that scarf and I just kind of wanted it. You did? That's right. That's right. You Instagrammed that. I remember that. Yeah. I love it. It's beautiful. Just the look of it on its own and it's, you could wear it to work and someone might not even know that you're being geeky because it just looks cool.
Exactly. I mean, she has some new stuff. There's the Clone Wars retro tee, and then there's also a Boba Fett tunic tank, which is kind of like a dress looking, thing. But if I remember, she said something about A-line skirts and scarves, and so I'm thinking maybe Star Wars Weekends merchandise?
Oh, I hope so.
I hope so.
Really awesome.
I'm going to go broke.
I paced myself, but I do remember that last year I was pacing myself, and then the Rogue dresses, they sold out by week 3. And
they were gone.
And the tunics were pretty slim pickings by the end. So people just remember that, this stuff is, and you can, one of the things I like to do is, you can ask buddies, can you get something for me too? So, pick it up and that type of stuff. And eventually it all ends up online.
True.
But it's fun to have it. It's fun to have it, right? I mean, you can still get the Rogue dress, but it's kind of fun to have it early on when not a lot of people are wearing it.
Yeah, so. I didn't have it at Star Wars Weekends. I got it much later, so I was the loser that was looking at all my friends going, oh, you have the Asajj Ventress thing. Oh, you have the Ahsoka thing. Oh, you're wearing the X-Wing stuff. I suck.
Yeah, but you have it now. So
I do have it now, but I have to get the R2-D2 fit and flare dress from Think Geek before Star Wars Weekends because I just have to.
Yep, that's a cool dress. So and one of the things that happened, since our last episode was the Lost Missions came out. Did you get to see them yet?
I have seen them all now. Yes. Now that I boycotted Twitter and told everybody to not tweet me in anything, and then somebody did, and I saw something, and I was like, no, cover your eyes, cover.
Well, we won't go into discussing it. Just to remind people that it's out there on Netflix, and that RebelForce Radio has been doing. They've been covering the arcs and doing their declassified, so they are available to hear Jason and Jimmy, and I think Kyle Newman and Paul Bateman to talk about them. So those are fun.
And me.
And you. Yay!
I will be. I'm going to be on for the arc involving Jar Jar Binks.
Wonderful, cool, awesome. So even better. I like that. So anyway, also March. This is Madness on StarWars.com. So it's Clone Wars characters have been included, which is really fun. I was bummed that Ahsoka was a playing character, but there's a lot of things that go into how they pick them. I expressed my thoughts extensively on Fangirl Blog in one long post, but that's how I roll. But what I really want to talk about is today we have Leia versus R2, which the results will be up already, when this podcast goes up. But R2
we don't know is winning 68% to 32%. Woohoo, R2D2! Sorry, Tricia.
Yeah, it's so funny. I voted Leia, and I admit this. I've split my vote on some of the ones where I vote one way at work and the other way, but I voted both for Leia, admittedly, on this one. But Luke lost to Obi-Wan, and I actually wasn't shocked about it, but it's interesting to see how people are shocked about it. And Teresa, were you shocked that he lost that battle?
No, because I voted for Obi-Wan. I'm horrible. No, I mean, come on. Oh, I'm going to make so many enemies. Okay, Luke Skywalker is great, but Obi-Wan Kenobi is James Arnold Taylor. and Ewan McGregor. And Alec Guinness. And holy goodness gracious.
Well, it's funny because I tweeted that if it had been me fan after the original trilogy, I would have voted Luke. I really liked Obi-Wan, but I would have voted Luke. But as time has gone on, and I think this helps Obi-Wan and it helps R2 in the case, is that there is a generation of fans who don't really know Luke and Leia. They know Obi-Wan and R2 because they've been in so many more movies and then obviously the Clone Wars. So I think they sort of have an advantage in that. And hopefully after episode 7, we see, more people who've been exposed to Luke and Leia as fans.
Right. But see, here's the thing. Obi-Wan is going to be going up against Yoda in the next round, and we know who's going to win. Because he won last year.
Wait. You don't know that, but she might have the Force. So, yeah, I predict, but, you never know. But I think it's predictable in some ways how the things will eventually end up. So I like that Yoda had his, smack-talking video for, the ESPN style.
That was hilarious.
Yeah, that cracked me up. So when I opined about it, about the characters out there, I really wanted more female representation. And one of the things, I really just was shocked that there was no handmaidens. And maybe that's not shocking to some people, but I just think that, as recognizable, Dorme was played by Rose Byrne, who's, she's done blockbuster movies, and Sabe was by Keira Knightley. And they're movie stars, and I think the handmaidens are just, in the Phantom Menace, they were one of the things that blew me away, and they have dialogue and they have action, and so it is just kind of my opinion, but when they announced it's not announced, it's a rumor that Latino Review put up that there, it's a rumor that there might be more of a James Bond style to the Indiana Jones franchise, where they bring in other actors to play, and that they could keep rolling this character. And I thought, I would love to see a handmaiden, as I think they're these operatives with crazy mad skills and training. And I was talking to my friend who also edits for me on the blog, BJ, and he reminded me that there actually is canon material that lays out how crazy trained the handmaidens are. And in the Force Unleashed campaign guide, these are role-playing guides in 2008, and also in the Secrets of Naboo, the role-playing game supplement for 2001, they laid out these incredible backstories where they were trained, including Padme, and could really people role-play these characters because they were so skilled that they could fly fighter pilots. And it, if you look at it, it's not expressly stated in the prequel trilogies, but Padme flies her own fighter and in the Attack of the Clones, and she kind of lays out the battle plan in the Phantom Menace, and the Handmaidens are integral part of the battle of Naboo, and that they need to perform, and they're right there next to, you know, the Royal Guard or whatever they're called, the guys that are with them. So anyway, what do you think? Do you think you would like to see more Handmaidens?
I think you're super passionate about Handmaidens. And I also think that's awesome. And I think that the Handmaidens have so much more to them than we do get to see. And I would love, like, Jones girls, Indiana Jones girls, like Bond girls that are like Handmaiden style characters. That would be really, really cool and a neat twist on things. And again, we're doing what we always do. We're pitching the book again. So, Irish, if you're listening, we want a Handmaiden novel.
Novel? I take a short story.
I would take a short story in the Star Wars Insider, please.
Yeah, based off that. Well, you know, one of the coolest things in the Force Unleashed campaign guide is that in the backstory, Sabe trained Leia in Winter, and also, and Rebels, I'm only pitching this because, you know, I just want to remind you that it is actually from the role-playing games, and they like to use that kind of source material, that Sabe actually went around, from the source book, she went around as an operative after Padme's death, and recruited people into the rebellion. And so if it says in this book that she traveled around and went to different places, that she could actually run across our rebels in the Rebel show.
Ooh.
And so
Greg
anyway,
Weisman.
yeah, so now we're really getting into it. But, you know, cool opportunity, you know, Greg, if you're listening, Dave Filoni, anybody. Yeah, so here we go. So anyway, so there's my crazy, we pitched more stories and more ideas, and we're having fun doing it. So, and if people like it, tweet out and say, hey, we really want this. I feel like we're now in the Kitster campaign.
we're the Handmaiden ambassadors.
We'll make it happen one way.
I want a Handmaiden action figure. Hey, James Burns, is there one of those that I'm not aware of?
So now that I've gone on my thing, you can go ahead and introduce our next segment.
And go on my thing. I'll go on with my thing. So we haven't done this before, but we wanted to talk about some of our favorite podcasts that we listen to and give some face time to some of our friends. So Dave Filoni was recently on RebelForce Radio, so we wanted to give a shout out for that, and to Jason and Jimmy for, you know, everything that they've done for us. But go check out RebelForce Radio. They have some awesome content on there. They've had a really cool interview with Dave Filoni, and then they had what's his name from the 70 show? Now we're gonna go into stuff. We're gonna get stumped. But yeah, they did a really cool thing with Sam Witwer. They've done some really cool audio for Honor Among Thieves with David Collins, and they've had so many cool things, and I'm blanking right now. But
that's okay. Sam Witwer did the Phantom Menace commentary, and he does that with every movie. They did the original trilogy, and they're really cool. You just put in the DVD and or Blu-ray, whichever you have, and watch it, and they sort of talk during it, and then it's really cool to experience kind of the movie in a different way. You get a little history, a little insight. And Sam Witwer was also on Schmoes Knows, their Star Wars podcast, Far, Far Away, and he had some really cool tidbits. He talked about a Kyle Newman pitch, if he had done Star Wars 7, and another pitch that actually sort of sounded like the Reclamation show that supposedly wasn't, or pitch idea that popped on the internet a while back and was disavowed by Lucasfilm. But I thought it was interesting that what he mentioned seemed very similar to that, with the shade or the shadow character with a lightsaber. So,
Oh, and I know who it was. It was Topher Grace. They had a really awesome interview with Topher Grace.
Well, they always do great interviews. And so you had another podcast. That's part of RebelForce Radio that you wanted to talk about.
Yes, I wanted to give a shout out to Mark and James from Radio 1138, and they actually had a new episode that went out today as we record this, which is March 27th. So go check out I think it's their 5th episode. They mentioned us on their 4th episode when they were talking about the toys and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure our listeners who've been listening to us recall the fun we had with that. And so I wanted to say thank you guys for the support and for mentioning us on Radio 1138.
That's great. I look forward to listening to it because you told me about it, and I need to catch up on that. And I wanted to make sure to give a shout out because Teresa does Star Wars Bookworms also with her co-host Erin Goins. And it's a wonderful podcast that really gets into the books and the comics, and you talk about it in detail. It's usually well after they've done, spoilers and stuff, but there's great discussion. And you guys have started your book club, so you want to explain that?
Yeah, so Star Wars Bookworms is now doing the Star Wars Bookworms Book Club. And actually right now we are in the middle of doing Truce at Bakura. And it is, how we're doing it is on Goodreads and also on our Facebook. So go over to facebook.com/Star Wars Bookworms. Also get on Goodreads and you can find the Star Wars Bookworms Book Club. It's a group, and what we're doing is we're breaking it down to where there's a certain number of chapters that we read each week, and as we go through, anybody, not just me and Aaron, but anybody can ask questions, to probe conversation, ask about different characters or themes or things that happened, and we have a really great discussion going on over there with the book and things that have to do with like character development, the way the plot is going, the use of the Force, all kinds of things. And so it's really neat because we're getting a chance to interact with our EU community and sort of keep the EU alive. And it's nice to be able to read a book with other people because a lot of times you read a book and then you want to talk about it, but people that either haven't read it or they haven't read it in a long time. So this way it's giving us a chance to all read it together, and it's really cool. So right now we have this one book going, and then we'll take a vote on the next one. We're going to try and do it monthly. We started this one in the middle of March, so it'll go until about the middle of April. So we may wait until the beginning of May to start the second book. That way we're actually end the month. But it's really, really fun. We're having a good time.
I'm so great that you guys are doing that. And I really wanted to make sure people knew that was happening because it's, sometimes you don't see everything that's happening in fandom. But book clubs are so a fun way to, especially if you've read a book and you want somebody to talk to. And this is, Goodreads is a cool place to be able to do that too. So.
Right. It's giving us a chance to go back and read some of the older books that some of us haven't read. And for me, it's going to give me a chance to read a lot of stuff I haven't read. So that's really cool. I also wanted to mention some of our friends at our other shows that we really like, such as Scum and Villainy Radio. They're doing an awesome show over there. Coffee with Kenobi always has good shows. And, of course, Full of Sith is doing a really good show as well. And Star Wars Report and all the people in the Star Wars Report podcast network, because I need to mention them. But there's so many Star Wars podcasts out there, so find your favorites and, support them and stuff. But, of course, one of your favorites has to be RebelForce Radio. So
absolutely. And I wanted to mention because Roku Depot, RokuDepot.com, they do a weekly podcast kind of review recap where they say what was discussed and what they liked and, what would be interesting for a reason to be interested in. And so every week they put that up and I try to make sure and post that and tweet it out. So if you're looking for a podcast and you want to see what's out there, they have a great recap. And he had tons this week, tons of podcasts. So we appreciate that, they go through the effort of listening to them and compiling the information. So it's a great resource.
Definitely. And thanks, guys, over at Roku Depot, because you tend to mention Fangirls Going Rogue and Star Wars Bookworms. So I'm super appreciative. Thanks a lot.
So, Teresa, I know this isn't a Star Wars podcast, but I think there's one that you really should listen to being a Batman fangirl, and it's called the Arkham Sessions. And we really like to talk to other fangirls, so I thought we'd have fun and talk to one of the hosts, Dr. Andrea Letamendi. Welcome, Andrea.
Hi, thanks for having me.
We're so excited that you're here.
I'm excited because, as you guys know, two of my most favorite things are Batman and Star Wars.
Well, this is perfect. Some people who listen to Star Wars podcasts might have heard you on Coffee with Kenobi and Full of Sith. So you've made the Star Wars podcast rounds before, and that's one of the reasons I really wanted to have you on, because you say some amazing things about just giving insights. And for people who aren't familiar with Drea, she has a PhD in clinical psychology and spoken at numerous big conventions like New York Comic Con, San Diego Comic Con, and upcoming WonderCon about the topics of Star Wars and superheroes in general. So it's just really cool to have you on.
Thank you.
Not only that, but we're competitive, and we can't have you on Full of Sith and Coffee with Kenobi and not be on the Fangirl show.
Well, I'm actually really excited to talk to other fangirls and kind of represent, the female side of it. So I'm definitely happy to chat about some of the same topics with you.
Awesome. No offense, boys. No offense. So I know she's been interviewed by a lot of people too, Tricia, right?
Yes. Been in the Huffington Post Psychology Today. That's her own work, and also featured on the Hollywood Reporter, Yahoo News, and the Mary Sue. So let's just get straight into it. We have some fangirl questions that we ask everybody who comes on the show. So, Teresa, you want to kick that off?
Oh, yeah. But, oh, man, it's been a month. Gosh. What's our first one? I think, how did you get into Star Wars? Is that our first one?
That is the first question.
I'm blanking today.
Okay, I do need to say that I'm terrible. I'm horrible at, the 5 questions or, the things people typically ask. I usually not good at just off the cuff. So I will do my best to.
That's okay. It can be quick and just where you started, because one of the things we really like to talk about is everybody starts from a different place in Star Wars. Yeah. So where did you start?
Okay. So when I was really young, I had an older sister. I have an older sister. She's 3 years older. And when I was really young, she and I had a couple of the toys. I remember we had a little Darth Vader figure and we would kind of play with it, but we didn't really know what Star Wars was. So I did have toys when I was little, but I didn't really know about it, if that makes sense. And then it wasn't until, the mid-90s when the movies were re-released that I sort of really connected with the story and started to kind of create my own character and, put together costumes. And I remember one of the re-releases, I showed up at the theater with my handmade Jedi cloak, and I made up some character that I was cosplaying, and no one else was dressed up. It was sort of one of those local theater things, and that's when I just knew that, okay, I really, really like this, and not a lot of other people really like it the way that I do, but that's when I just knew that it was going to be a huge part of my world.
Huge part of your existence.
Yes.
On the planet.
Yes.
So what is I think it's cool that you had a handmaiden character, because that was one of my underrated things about Star Wars is the handmaidens. So is there a moment that you realized that you were a fangirl, and what does that mean to you?
Yes, and I do want to clarify, it was not a handmaiden. I handmade a costume. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I caught that.
Are there handmaidens? That's not even something that I would even notice. But that probably speaks to the question of what I gather you're asking is the fangirl aspect of it.
Yeah.
Probably because something that I do remember is that not a lot of girls were fans of Star Wars when I was when I first started to become a fan of Star Wars. I was a young teenager, and I felt like I had some friends that were into it and liked it, but I absolutely had no other female friends in my cohort that were as passionate as I was. So I did notice that kind of lack of fangirlism, and it was a little strange to me. I didn't have other girlfriends that we would bond over this. I didn't dress up with other girls. My honest kind of recollection and reminiscing about it is that it was sort of an isolating type of fandom at that point. And it wasn't until in my later years, in my late 20s and early 30s, that I finally started to meet other women that were fans and started to feel like, okay, we share this bond and this passion. And that kind of changed the way in which I viewed the fandom entirely. So it's a little bit of a different experience based on kind of like how old I was.
So actually, Claire Grant, who we'd interviewed last episode, actually kind of shared the same experience that you just did. So that when she got older, she met people that she could share it with, and she felt sort of alone as a kid experiencing fandom in a lot of different ways, not just Star Wars, but all the things that she enjoyed. I
agree with that. The same was true for Batman, that I was probably 11 or 12 when I got into Batman, and I didn't know anyone else that was into it. So I would sort of rush home and watch Batman the animated series after school, and I was really into it. And I'm guessing other kids at my school were into it, but I didn't have friends that were sharing that passion, and I didn't play, I didn't have toys and play with other kids, regarding Batman or Star Wars. I just sort of kept that passion to myself. And then again, it wasn't until I was much older and going to comic conventions that I finally connected with other people and other girls who liked the same thing.
I think that's true for a lot of people that are probably in your age range, just because of the way that things were then. And I feel like the kids that are growing up today should feel very lucky, because fandom is such a thing that's in your face now that they're finding the people that they can be friends with and go and cosplay with. And I think it's awesome. I also think it's awesome that you use the word cohort, because I used to teach and we used to talk about cohorts all the time. It was one of those teacher words that always made me laugh, because I was like, that's a funny word.
That's how I perceived my peers.
Off topic. Anyway, so now that you are in the fandom community and in the fangirl community, what does being a fangirl mean to you now?
I think it's a huge difference now as an adult. I sort of feel, I very much agree with you, because when I was a kid, I didn't I don't remember being able to go to the store and buy a Batman t-shirt that was my size and for my gender, or any clothes or any kind of gear and stuff. So I feel like there's a lot more, expression of the fandom and acceptance surrounding it, that maybe, and again, I know that it's gained popularity over time, but I feel like there's a reduced stigma around, being a fan and being a geek of some of these things. And, that in combination with, the huge consumerism around it, I just feel like there's a lot of factors going into it that makes it hugely popular and much more widely accepted, so that, I can easily find other people that share this passion, almost to the degree that there's oversaturation. I'm not complaining about that, but I feel like this is strikingly different than the way that I grew up.
Absolutely. We used to have to struggle to get information. I was in high school when Return of the Jedi came out, and it would be like you'd get a little blip of information, and it'd be weeks before you'd hear anything from. And I actually did have a girlfriend who was into Star Wars, so I did have somebody in high school. But it would be, people are like, "Oh, I can't believe we haven't heard anything about the movie, and they're going crazy right now." And I'm like, "Oh man, you should have been back in
I know. In the dark ages where we knew nothing."
Oh my gosh, you were in high school when Return of the Jedi came out?
Yeah, I was a senior, and my teacher knew I loved it so much that he let me out of class early so I wouldn't get, a skip day to go see it. So I could stay, we had to stand in line too. That was another thing that you don't have to do anymore for movies.
So are you prepared for me to make you feel bad right now?
Yeah, you can. Go ahead.
I wasn't even alive.
That's all right. It's one of the things that I love that I got to experience Star Wars from the beginning. I saw it in the movie theater, so it's it's just kind of a cool thing that I can talk about in different. But I love that there's people who weren't alive when I went to see it in high school that are enjoying it. So that's neat to me.
Yeah, I feel like I missed out because I was very young when. I was really young when when Empire came out, in that we came out in the same year. So I missed the opportunity, developmentally to really be a part of that movement. And sometimes I feel nostalgic about it because I was around, but of course, I wasn't around at the beginning. So I feel like the people that were around share that particular, set of memories, and it's one that I can't quite relate to. But it's special,
It is, and one of the weird things is that I don't think people realize how amazing it is that movie is so beloved. When we essentially walked out of the movie theater, like, what just happened? And
yeah.
And you didn't know what was going to happen. And so it's crazy that now that movie is just still people love it, when it was like one of the most frustrating experiences, because you were like, wow, that blew my mind, but I don't know what's happening next. So
that is really cool. And I'm glad that I have friends that went through that. I got the prequels. Yay! That's an enthusiastic I like the prequels, so yay.
I'm actually and I've talked about this with the Full of Sith folks, that I am a fan of the prequels because I think that it lays down some important storytelling and narrative for a lot of understanding that we have about a couple of the characters. So I appreciate it for, I never expected them to be, replicating. I didn't think they were not supposed to be like the originals, but I feel like they're really important in terms of the storytelling.
Well, it's sort of like you kind of see in Vader and Batman, both the characters are these sort of masked, well, they're not heroes, but these characters that take on this like identity where they sort of block themselves off from everybody. So sort of in the way that we get to understand how Vader becomes that man in the suit, seems like there'd be some parallels to why you would enjoy the character of Batman also.
Yeah. I actually haven't really even thought about those parallels, but, you're right. There's this interesting, complex dynamic about both of those characters struggling with, I think struggling with some of their world being very destructive and trying to maintain, a sense of goodness and a sense of being pro-social. And of course, that's a big struggle. It's more of a struggle for Anakin. But, I think that's an interesting comparison.
Yeah, we obviously seen in some, sometimes we see the longer backstory of how Batman got in the suit, but not in the way that it was sort of played out in the prequel trilogies, where you really see this like kid who, how did he get to that place where he made that choice? Which I actually, there were things I liked the original trilogy better, but there were things that were so impactful from the prequel trilogy, just in understanding how he got to that place where he's this, Vader's this guy walking into the spaceship in the opening moments, and you're just terrified of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, with Batman, though, we get it's Batman's comic books, and they always give us 5 different stories for everything. So Batman has 2 or 3 different ways that his parents died at this point. There's the Dark Knight version, and then there's the version from the comic books, and then there's the version from the original Batman movies. So confusing.
What's interesting, I think I agree. There's a lot of with the comic books, with the DC universe, there's a lot of complexity and a lot of retconning and things going on. But I think what is interesting, recently, CNN.com asked me some questions about the psychology of Batman because, of course, this is, we're celebrating 75 years of Batman this year.
Woohoo!
I was answering questions about, sort of the his, this character, this person, this fictional person, is sort of being so universal and standing, the test of time. And one thing that I do believe is that the origin story, even though, as Teresa mentioned, there's like some slight changes and subtleties in the different storytelling, but the origin story and the story of his parents is typically the same. We're not talking about some of those alternate stories where, like, his father survives and so forth, but he witnesses his parents being murdered, and he's left alone, just looking at his parents' bodies. I know this is a little bit dark, but the reason why that's very important is that he's still a child. I haven't encountered any story or any origin story rewritten about this where he's much older. He's usually between the ages of 6 and 10. And it's really important to sort of understand that narrative and its importance in the mythos of Batman, because that age, it's sort of like he's old enough to understand and sort of build this sort of understanding of the world around him, but he's too young, like he's still young enough where he's not independent. He's not cognitively, able to think in ways that he would be able to recover quickly from this. He's emotionally sort of not quite developed yet. So there's a lot of interesting things developmentally that are important about that trauma happening to him. And so I find it really interesting that that story is sort of preserved that way.
Well, it's interesting, too, because a lot of people struggled with Anakin being so young in The Phantom Menace, but he's essentially stripped of his parents, not in by death, but removed from Shmi at a very young age, and taken into a setting where people essentially don't understand kids like him who have, been in that situation. So it actually, it makes sense why George Lucas picked, that point in time for him to be so young, and that he felt like he needed to, expose Anakin at that age to make it, the rest of it work for the story, as opposed to, say, making him, 14, 15, 16-year-old and start his sort of anti-hero journey.
Yeah.
If you call it that.
No, it makes sense. I guess the thing I was referring to is, isn't there a story of that of course he sees his parents get killed, but in one version I've read it was the Joker that did it, and then in the Dark Knight version it wasn't. So I don't know.
That's true. In the 1989 Michael Keaton version, those filmmakers or whoever wrote that decided that it would be the Joker that kills his parents. In my recollection, that may be the only version where it's the Joker, and I think most other versions, if not all other versions, it's either Joe Chill or some other like rando, thug in Gotham City. It's really only that big movie, in the 80s that really decided on that murder being caused, by the Joker. And I think for the storytelling in that film by itself, like maybe that made sense, but that's not how the origin story was initially, presented, and since then I don't think it's been written that way.
Right. And I just kind of compare that to, with Anakin not really having a father, he just had his mom. He kind of looked to people like Obi-Wan or Qui-Gon Jinn as, a father-type figure. And he loses Qui-Gon, and then he all the time seems to feel like he's losing something, or that he's not as important, or whatever it is that he's feeling. And I feel like there's just some really deep, probably grief-motivated underlying issues that he has. And it makes it kind of interesting because Batman is motivated by grief, and so is Anakin. And once he turns into Vader, I think his pure motivation is, grief at everything he's lost. Mm-hmm. Why do you think that grief is such an effective emotion for this kind of storytelling and to, bring these themes into film?
I think your assessment of it is spot on in terms of loss and people close to you dying or being taken away from you. That experience is incredibly impactful on people's psychology, and it's interesting because it's actually really a coincidence that you bring this up now, because our recent podcast episode was about Mr. Freeze in the episode Heart of Ice. And his, as most people know who are fans of Batman, Mr. Freeze had, before he was Mr. Freeze, he was Victor Freeze. He was a scientist who was into cryogenics. His wife, Nora, was, had this illness that was incurable at the time. And he, in Batman the Animated Series, he basically was encountered by the owner of all, this company that allowed the research of cryogenics and allowed Victor Freeze to preserve, at the time, his wife in this cryogenic tube or chamber. And the guy cut the funding. I don't know if you guys have seen this episode, but it's really moving. He essentially breaks in, into the lab. He tells them basically to unplug, the cryogenic chamber and to basically sacrifice his wife's life. It's a very moving scene. And there's, of course, an accident. There's, there's a scuffle. Victor Freeze gets kicked into a bunch of chemicals and everything spills. There's vapor. And so it's basically all the makings of a villain in the Batman universe. And he then becomes Mr. Freeze, and he has to sort of live his life in the Sub-Zero suit. And he's thereafter pursuing the man that essentially killed his wife. So the reason I bring up that story is that kind of reaction, this feeling that after someone you love has been taken away from you beyond your control, that a lot of times when that happens to people, there is this sort of this grief experience, and sometimes this abnormal grieving process where someone is unable to recover from that loss. And so they develop a lot of difficult and challenging behavioral and cognitive symptoms, like, constantly feeling that loss, inability to get over it, and to have constant ruminations and thoughts about how to bring that person back, as irrational as that might sound. And also this feeling of anger, and this is the important piece, this feeling of anger and resentment, toward whoever or whatever they believe caused that loss and changed their life forever. So I know that was a big ramble, but that goes back to, both Bruce Wayne and to Anakin, who, is driven by this sense of huge loss, the sense of the loss of control, and wanting to basically correct that.
Do you think that the feelings of loss that he may have experienced early on in his life motivate the need to control situations and the need to try to prevent more loss from happening? Because that's kind of how I feel it sort of goes down, is he encounters all of these things, and then he gets to the point to where he has to have control over certain aspects of his life, and the aspects of his life he wants to control are the not losing anyone else. Mm-hmm. And then he loses his mom, and that, he had no control over that. And so suddenly he gets this obsession of trying to control losing Padme. And he didn't slow down enough to think that maybe he could be the cause of the loss that would occur. And I don't really know what I was asking at this point. But if anybody has a comment.
No, I think you're right there.
Well, and it's interesting because this actually ties into being a fan, I think. Because as a fan, we see a lot of people who, there's a lot of frustration in the fandom right now, and that has a lot to do with not feeling like they have any control of what will happen in the future of the fandom. And that's because things are in the works and we don't know what's going to happen. And it's not exactly a parallel as far as grief, but I think in some ways I actually experienced, I realized recently that I was very frustrated on Twitter one day, and it all tied into, for me as a fan, that we had lost author Aaron Alston last month. It was actually the day after we recorded our episode, and we're going to talk about that in another episode. But I realized that one of the things I felt like I had lost control of as a fan was he was very important for writing great female characters, and I felt like, oh, wow, where's that void going to be filled? And then I realized that I was expressing frustration as a fan in that sort of, I don't feel like, it's not control, but I felt like there was someone in there who would represent and do the things that I liked as a creator. And then I was like, oh, what's going to happen? And I took a step back and I was like, okay, why am I anxious today? And I looked at it and it really boiled down to that. So it's just an interesting thing sometimes when we're fans, we get into discussions and it's not really about the discussion. It's about feeling like we can't control what's going to happen with something we love.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I think that's also an accurate parallel because there is that sense of wanting to have control over it. And I think too, the sense of ownership, like when you're a passionate fan of something, and if you've been around since the beginning, you sort of have this like false sense of ownership around it. And I think that's where some of the resentment toward newcomers comes from, sort of the accusations about fake geeks and those feelings of suspicion and resentment in that direction. I think that's where that comes from.
Well said. How do you think whenever, I know sometimes, I mean, I experienced that coming into the fandom, I didn't know enough about the role-playing games when I would get in lit discussions that, you didn't know enough about these sources and therefore your discussion or your point of view wasn't valid. That was kind of the strange, one of the ways I experienced it. And how do you think we can encourage people to say you can own something as prominent fans, that you own something, but it's good to have more people in your kind of ownership of something as a fan?
I think, it's a tough thing because I'm guilty of it too. I experience some of that resentment. I'm not looking out for people that may not be authentically fans of I'm not looking to bully anybody, but sometimes I do feel this sense of, our newcomers, they've not been around as long. So do they understand the importance of some of the creators and writers? Do they understand the importance of certain stories? We were just talking about like the origin story of Batman. So like, do others understand the important aspects of some of those origin stories? And will they support us when we really want to preserve some of those aspects? But sometimes I feel like, I think because we know what it's like to be excluded and we know what it's like to be marginalized, sometimes we reenact that or replay that with other people. Because now we find, like, I'm speaking from my own experience, I feel like we finally feel like we're a part of something and we're accepted and we're even in a lot of cases kind of like in the mainstream, and it's difficult for us to be there. And so when someone's different or someone's new or someone isn't into it the same way we are, sometimes we do resort back to that, that insider-outsider, inclusion-exclusion type of dynamic. And it's human nature, and as I said, it's kind of what we know because we experienced a lot of that when we were younger, but it's not productive. And I also think that sometimes some of us, again, I'm guilty of this too, look for that exclusion when it may not be there. So as a woman, as a geek girl, sometimes I'm a little hypervigilant and might notice like, oh, they're not, that there's no female character in this story, or, oh, there's a female character, but they're not good enough, or they're not this enough, or they're not prominent enough, or, that person didn't ask me what my needs were when I'm in that comic book shop. Like, I feel like, yes, sometimes there are injustices and there is underrepresentation, but a lot of times we're a little bit sensitive, only in the sense that we're kind of looking for those signs where we may not, again, is it very productive to do that constantly?
Oh, I battle with that all the time. And Teresa and I have actually talked about that, maintaining the, looking out for things that you feel are important, but also being a positive part of the fandom, yes. and reminding people that you very much love the fandom and the franchise, whatever that may be. So that's always one of the things that, yes, I struggle with. And I noticed that you had a mission statement on your website and for Under the Mask. And that's one of the ways I've sort of maintained my focus is sometimes I have a mission statement for myself, and I remind myself when I start getting on, like I think like a dog on a squirrel, I get focused and I'm like, no, this is what you want to do with your fandom. So I thought that was cool that I saw that on your website.
Yeah, I didn't.
Mission statement.
Wait, so Teresa, what's your mission statement? Do you have one?
I don't have a mission statement. My mission statement is to have fun. I don't know. I don't even know what that means.
Actually, Teresa, we sort of did that when we sat down at the beginning when we first. This is our 6th episode, so we sort of talked about what we wanted to do. And the other day on Tuesday, Teresa and I talked on the phone just a little bit to try to make sure we were focusing positively on our this episode. So
yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, be positive. And then Tricia has to remind me to do that sometimes because I fly off the handle and say things. And I get emails that say, Teresa, don't do that.
All right. She's okay. So one of the things was we wanted to make sure that you have some panels coming up at WonderCon, including I have loved your psychology of Star Trek versus Star Wars, and you have one of our favorite actors, Catherine Tabor, on that panel. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So this is episode 3, which is just signifies the 3rd time that we've done this panel at either WonderCon or Comic-Con. And this panel, as you said, it's called The Psychology of Star Trek versus Star Wars. And we sort of have this, it's a very sort of fun, healthy, non-competitive debate, basically pulling out very important psychological themes from both the Star Wars and the Star Trek narratives. And the basic structure is that there's a Star Wars team and there's a Star Trek team. On the Star Wars team, we have Catherine Tabor, who is, as you know, was the voice of Padme on the Clone Wars. And on the Star Trek side, Chase Masterson, who was on Deep Space Nine, is representing with another psychologist. So each side gets its own psychologist. I am, of course, on the Star Wars side, and there's a moderator who asks questions. And like I said, it's a lot of fun. It's meant to be entertaining, and it's also meant to be a celebration of our fandom. Like, a lot of fans come and just try to, like, they want to participate. They ask questions, and we're not trying to, like, bash the other side. We're really just trying to pull out some of the really meaningful relationships and stories from both, franchises, and really demonstrate that there's a lot of important psychological themes there that we can learn from and that we can sort of put, into a reality. So that's our panel that we're excited about.
That's cool. You should do one that's like Avengers versus Justice League.
That would be awesome. I've not thought about that. That would be really cool. People might get into big fights, though, on that.
Oh, I know. That would go crazy, because people are on both sides of the fence on that one, because I'd be like, ooh, Batman and Green Lantern, and then I'd be like, but like, Iron Man and Thor.
Yeah, that would be... I actually was on a panel at New York Comic Con a couple years ago, and it was actually like Iron Man versus Batman, who's like what's more realistic, and that was just like there was a lot of bloodshed for that one.
I could see that. It'd be, yeah, but that's what I've liked about, I've read the recap. Some fans have gone and typed out, or you've typed out what the transcripts, and then they've shown up on videos, YouTube, that some of this discussion, and it's really fantastic. In a positive way. I don't think there's any reason Star Trek and Star Wars can't commingle in a person's fandom. So they're both great experiences. And Chase Masterson, I saw her speak at Geek Girl Con 3 years ago, and I was blown away by her story. So that's really cool. She's on there with Kat Tabor. So
yeah, it should be a lot of fun. There's another panel that folks might be interested in. It's multiculturalism in comic books. I think that's the title. It's basically sort of talking about underrepresentation in comic book narratives, including ethnic and racial minorities, as well as gender and sexual minorities. And that is also kind of a recurring panel. It's been done before at Comic-Con, and it's coming back with some new panelists. So I'm really excited to talk about themes such as being a female fan, being a fan with ethnic minority status, and so I think that'll be an interesting and hopefully a really important panel.
Yeah, that is interesting. And Tricia, you and I have talked about this before. Like, I can identify more with like gender diversity and gender representation, and I'm of an ethnic minority too. But because in the world of science fiction, there's so many aliens and stuff like that, I have such a hard time even wrapping my head around like racial diversity, because in a sense it is racially diverse, at least Star Wars, because there's all these different alien characters. Now I can see it more in Star Trek or something like Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings or something like that. That is easier for me, but in Star Wars with so many aliens, I just go, huh?
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting how, just different people experience it. But the panel I really wish I could be there to see is the Batgirl Begins Again, because you're doing it with Gail Simone.
Yes. So Batgirl Begins Again is a panel with myself and Gail, and we'll be talking about the re-envisioning and the rewriting of Barbara Gordon's story. And as many people know, in the last couple of years, in the New 52, she's been rewritten as someone who still, in the original story, she was victimized and experienced physical and psychological trauma when she was shot in the spine by the Joker. And in this new version, in the New 52, that still happened, but she had this period of time recovering physically and psychologically. And it's really well written. Gail, prior to my interacting and consulting with her, Gail had presented this really moving story in the first issue of Batgirl. I think that was a couple of years ago, maybe early or late 2011, and really wrote in some interesting and like moving stuff about having traumatic flashbacks, having, sort of post-traumatic stress responses, being constantly reminded of this horrible thing happening to her. And we connected, and she had asked me some questions about some realistic stuff, like what would therapy look like? What would a psychologist work with her on? What would those struggles be? And she had very kindly actually included a character in issue number 16 of Batgirl, where the clinical psychologist who works with Barbara Gordon is named after me. And a lot of the work that we did together, it was such such an, I just could not describe how, I felt like, of course, it was, special, but it also just made me feel like she was honoring the mental health field and really valuing the work that these professionals do. And I just really think that it's an empowering and inspiring story. So we're very excited to be, to have a panel like this and to be able to talk more about that.
Gail Simone is actually one of my fangirl heroes. I am familiar with, Women in Refrigerators and how she just started speaking up about things that she valued as a fan and really made a difference and ended up being a creator in the fandom. And I can't remember the name of the magazine, but Women in Refrigerators was listed as one of the top most influential sites on the internet. It was a kind of a cultural look back of, just the whole internet. And it was listed in there it was like top 20. And I was like, wow. But, she had been influential to me. And everybody should follow her on Twitter because, she's a Star Wars fan and tweets about it sometimes. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So where can we, as my thing dings, where can we find you, Drea, on the internet if, people want, and we'll put all this in our show notes, people, so no panicking, but just so she can lay it out for everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, so the best way to interact with me, if you have questions or just want to say hello or want to know what's up with me on a routine basis, is to follow me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @ArkhamAsylumDoc. That's DOC. The website is underthemaskonline.com, and that's where I post some occasional articles. I posted about a case conceptualization of Darth Vader and Iron Man and a whole bunch of different characters. But that's also where I post every week the Arkham Sessions episodes. And so if folks are interested in Batman and psychology, I urge them to check out the Arkham Sessions, which is linked on that website. And of course, there's Facebook. The Arkham Sessions is on Facebook. Just search the Arkham Sessions.
That's how we say, just search Fangirls Going Rogue on Facebook. It'll pop up.
Yeah. I have a new podcast.
Yeah, I know. Poor Teresa. I'm like, can I add one more to your list now? But I haven't gotten to listen to all of them, but I listen sometimes and I'm just in awe of just understanding the storytelling. And I think really to understand storytelling, you have to understand why people do things that don't necessarily make sense, mm-hmm. but in their in the psychology of being a human being, and that's what storytelling ultimately is. The things that villains and heroes do actually do make sense, and that's why myth works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. And I was just so excited that we got to make this happen because I just love the work you're doing in the fandom, and we really appreciate your time.
Thank you. It was a blast.
So we're now on to our favorite part of the show. It's my favorite part of the show. What about you?
Actually, it is my favorite part of the show. So I was surprised that we get really great response to this section, and we like to do it at the end. So this was kind of a no-brainer who we were going to chat about.
Absolutely. It was a completely no-brainer. So we have a YouTube show, plug, that we like to call Fangirl Chat. And on Fangirl Chat, we talked about Sabine, we talked about Freddie Prinze Jr., and we've talked about other things, non-Star Wars. But we knew we had to talk about this one character, but we couldn't just leave it on the YouTube show. That would have just been, just sad. And so we decided that we would dedicate a whole section to Hera Syndulla.
Yay!
So excited. Vanessa Marshall, this is for you.
Yes. And I'm crazy excited about just the design of the character of Hera, because she is a pilot and she owns the Ghost. And so, they did Lucas Siegel got to do an interview with Vanessa Marshall, and, she talked about, Kanan's character. He's definitely the leader and that he's a Jedi, and that, he's a leader in that way. But, when when Han's on his ship and he's flying, he's in charge. And so I think it's so awesome that we're going to see this great female character who she owns the cool thing in, that you get to have the Lego set of and the collectible, the ghost. She owns it, and she's a boss on that ship.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's going to be amazing. And I think Chopper is actually hers. I mean, I'm not 100% on that, but I think Chopper belongs to her. And so if that's true, she's got the ship. She's got the droid. She has the motherly power to contain all of the ruffians, the little hellions. Not really, but all the kids, because Ezra and Sabine are definitely going to be kids, and she's going to be the strong-minded, nurturing guide. She's going to be the backbone of this show. So I know Kanan is like the main character or whatever, but behind every good guy is an amazing woman.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You were plugging the words from the introduction video. That warm and nurturing, I thought, was really cool, because it seems like maybe, especially being a Jedi, that Kanan wouldn't be inclined to bringing people into the circle, but maybe Hera is, in her nurturing way. She's maybe formed this crew by bringing in this, group, and it's slowly getting bigger and bigger. And so I think that's a really neat dynamic, where it almost seems, when you look at the final shot of the cast, that of our 6 heroes, that they're sort of look like a family.
Aww.
Even though, they're from different places, but family sometimes can be defined in different ways. So that's what I thought. And I also thought, in the interview with Vanessa Marshall, Dave Filoni talked about that. I believe it was on the RebelForce Radio interview. He's done a lot of interviews recently on print and with the podcast. That he really wanted to establish a different cast and have different. He didn't want to have the Clone Wars sort of a connection with the cast. So we see a really different cast coming in, but Ashley Eckstein sort of was a glue there for the Clone Wars, as was James Arnold Taylor and Catherine Tabor, that they really went out there and they were ambassadors. And it seems like Vanessa has, in her interview, that she kind of, she says she stands up for her own convictions in her daily life and truly walks the walk. And so I think it's really cool that we see not just the character, but also the actress maybe being a little bit of that. She's a natural leader in a way.
She is, and she's really been an ambassador for Rebels, and she's been on Twitter a lot, interacting with the fans, interacting with us, and we're so excited for that, and I know I am, and I couldn't believe it when she started following me on Twitter. I was like, I have the most awesome day ever, and then today she made it even more awesome, and that's just how awesome Vanessa Marshall is, and I'm going to say the word awesome like 5 times.
Well, and the other thing in the interview she talks about is that she actually, kind of had a fangirl flail when she found out she got the part. So, I always say these characters aren't the actors, but an actor can make a character. So I think that's definitely, you can't give enough credit to the casting on the Clone Wars, the people they picked to do the show. And I think, again, we see this incredible cast of characters that people are so excited to be doing what they're doing, that we can't help but think that it's going to be awesome. The show will be awesome.
Man, I just have to agree with you. Sorry, go ahead.
But, and for that reason, Hera just, the idea of her, and not only that, here's another thing. Twi'leks, did I say that right? Twi'leks, they, a lot of times they get portrayed as in one type of character. They're the dancing girl, or, they come on screen and they're not necessarily, people have an image. And I think, she's dressed very, kind of plainly, but you see her very confident. And I think we're just going to see them kind of totally break the stereotype, what people think. And I think that's really cool.
I do too.
So.
I think it's really awesome that they're doing that. And I don't know if you saw, but Vanessa Marshall today posted that she was getting, buying like a headdress, a Twi'lek Liku green headdress, and it sounds to me as if she's going to be cosplaying as Hera.
Well, and that's my one thing that if I were going to say for the character, I was like, oh, are they going to find a way to make it easy for people to cosplay this character. So I hope somebody does. I hope somebody finds a way to make it accessible to get, the head tails, and because it's an awesome look and I want to cosplay it too at some point. But if she is, wow, awesome.
I think it's awesome that the actress who plays Hera is going to be cosplaying as Hera. That is perfect in my book of perfectness.
Well, I remember when James Arnold Taylor came out at Star Wars Weekends in the Obi-Wan costume. I thought that was amazing.
Oh,
so.
It's all amazing. So I just think that they're doing such a great job with Rebels, and we are such fans of Rebels already, and it hasn't even started. And I know I just can't wait for that first movie episode, whatever it is, special that they're going to do, and then for the show to start. I really am. I'm so excited.
And while we're talking about, we did do an episode of Fangirl Chat on Sabine, and we were crazy excited about her character. And I wanted to congratulate Tia Sircar. I saw it on Tracy Canobio's Twitter feed that she is on Deadline. She got cast in the How I Met Your Mother spinoff, which is How I Met Your Dad, I believe. So there've been a lot of casting news. So that is crazy amazing.
That is really cool. So congratulations to her. And we love Sabine just as much as we love Hera. We promise.
Yeah. Now we're going to be, I think, didn't we have a debate over who is going to cosplay who? Because we could do both. So
right. I think you should do Hera, and I'll be the kid, and I'll be Sabine.
Okay.
Because
we can do that.
I think that fits us. Even though you like pink.
Well, maybe I'll put Hera in some pink and shake it up.
There you
go. She borrows Sabine's armor. Because I think she's not just going to fly. I think we're going to see more than just flying. Because, Han Solo can, she sort of is the Han Solo character. He can shoot a blaster.
Han Solo of Rebels. Woo! How cool is that?
That's what I see her as. So anyway, now that we've, we talk about the characters. A lot of times we talk about them in retrospect, but this was talking about characters in anticipation. And that's kind of the best type of fan fun that we can have.
Yeah, well, maybe we can revisit it again after Rebels comes out, like after the first season of Rebels. We can go back and see if, I'm sure we're going to feel the same, but maybe we'll since we'll have more information, we'll be able to say more.
Well, and there's a possible connection to the Clone Wars, and that's what I'm excited to see, with the last name Syndulla. And, there's been a lot of speculation, and I like those tie-ins, and at the same time, I still think that I don't get expectations because, it could go any number of possible ways, so it's exciting.
Yay! Very exciting. So we want to thank everyone so much for joining in with us on our discussions on our Facebook page and on Twitter and everywhere else that you guys interact with us. And we encourage you to send us emails and send us voicemails and anything because we really appreciate it. It makes my day when I see that we have a voicemail. Just letting you know, makes my day. So thank you for everyone. We appreciate it so much, and we will definitely be sharing some of the feedback that we get from you guys on future shows. It's just kind of hard when we have a monthly show to also fit all of that stuff in. So if you haven't gotten a response from us via email or on Twitter or something like that, just send it to us again, and we'll get to you if we missed you. So here's where you can find us on Twitter. We're at FG Going Rogue, and Tricia is at Fangirl Cantina on Twitter, and I am at Ice Cold Penguin. We also have an Instagram. It's kind of hard for me to post on Instagram, and I'll tell you why, Tricia. I will tell you why. It's because Instagram does not have an easy way for me to switch between accounts.
Yes, I experienced that problem, so I understand. But you do tag Fangirls Going Rogue.
I do tag Fangirls Going Rogue. So, I got to get better at, switching in and out of the two. But follow us on Instagram. It's at FG Going Rogue. Our email address is fangirlsgoingrogue@gmail.com. And our voicemail is 331-21-EWOKS, which is 331-213-9657.
And Facebook, easy. Search Fangirls Going Rogue. And we've had some awesome discussions on there. And we try to put up some really cool news when it pops up. So definitely follow us there on Facebook. And Tumblr, that's my realm. Teresa does Instagram usually, and I tumble, and I try to set that up and pull cool things, artwork, fan art, and stuff like that from Rebels. And that's Fangirls Going Rogue on tumblr.com. And then also, please go like RebelForce Radio on iTunes and leave a positive review. And in your review, mention how much you liked Fangirls Going Rogue. And we appreciate you doing one or both. That would be great.
Yep. Anything that you do that helps RebelForce Radio is awesome. Keep them one of the #1 Star Wars podcasts on the iTunes feed. They deserve it. And it allows you to hear all of their awesome shows like Influences, and they do the special shows where they did stuff with like Mark Hamill and Anthony Daniels, and then they have the music one that I'm blanking on the name of it, and they have so many cool shows on there. So join RebelForce Radio on iTunes. You won't regret it. And so until next time, are you ready, Tricia? We haven't done this in a month.
I know.
You ready?
Yep.
Okay. And until next time, yep.
Yep.